She's saying that we are behind the curve. She's saying that the Fed is behind the curve, and I happen to think she's right, but they're way, way behind. And right now, the risks have obviously gone up appreciably. I'm not so sure Dudley would have been quite as hawkish as he was this morning had the JOLTS data come out before he had to speak, actually, because there was what we were all looking for today was some mention of December, some kind of an indication that that calendar could be go time, and they didn't.
And here's the risk, Ron and Sana, is that Eric Rosengren specifically noted that if, and I'm paraphrasing here, folks, you got to apologize, like a 20-page document just came out. Basically, I'll paraphrase Mr. Rosengren. If they didn't raise rates now, they're going to have to raise rates a lot faster in the future to contain runaway inflation. Again, paraphrasing.
Well, maybe. And we certainly...
That's just his view, though.
Yeah, and Danielle and I would probably disagree a little bit on this score insofar as inflation expectations are not running away. And Brian, you talk about the bond vigilantes, and yes, they're driving rates up. Financial conditions are tightening as the dollar firms. Commodities are beginning to come down a bit. So I'm not sure that there's still any rush. I mean, I'm kind of getting to the point where I honestly don't care if they raise rates a quarter point at some juncture in the future, because it's getting old. The minutes are old. Even me, you know, or even I, for somebody who's been saying that they're not going to and they shouldn't. At this juncture, get it out of the way, although they will need some help from fiscal policy eventually if the Fed is going to normalize rates.
Lindsay?
Yep.
Well, what's interesting in the minutes, it seems the main argument to raise rates now is really centered around the Fed's credibility. Yeah. They raised in December, so they have to continue with that. Or this notion of time frame. Since when does the calendar drive monetary policy? But it's really the doves that have the argument with the data behind them. Slow growth, non-existent inflation, the consumer under pressure with declining income, negative business investment. There's really no incentive at this point looking at the data. So if the Fed is truly data dependent, there really is no sense of immediacy to raise rates right now. And certainly they may have to raise rates faster if we turn the corner into 2017 or beyond. But the risk of raising rates too fast more than offsets the risk of raising them too slow at this point. So I think the doves have it. I think, if anything, the minutes really reinforce the idea that there's no sense of urgency to raise rates at November or the December meeting.
Waiting too long risks the expansion, Paul. That was what I heard Hampton say. How?
Well, I just getting back to this. You know, if you look at the decision, if they don't go in December, where will the Doves have any pressure? Because the 3 dissenters are all going to be non-voting members next year. So there's going to be little pressure to hike rates going forward if the 3 dissenters, the 3 people who want to hike rates the most, are no longer voting members. And the people replacing them are to the dovish of them. So, you know, if there's not a sense now, there's not a sense of urgency now, there will not be a sense of urgency.
But what's the risk to the expansion in waiting longer?
Well, in waiting longer, you're going to have an issue. If you wait longer, you have inflation issues. You know, will inflation pick up? But what we're, you know, and that's a Dove's argument, is that there's slack in the jobs market. The JOLTS gave them more ammo today. Although, I mean, there's seasonal adjustments to that, seasonal issues with that JOLTS data.
But, you know, it was really interesting, though, that they actually used the word credibility
in
the minutes. I mean, that was amazing. And I think that kind of speaks to Eric Rosengren and his stance that the cost of waiting too long is going to be another burst of financial instability. And that's where he's had his focus.
And you know, the flip side of this is that we're getting split messages now from the bond and stock markets. Yesterday, it looked like the stock market was starting to worry about a Democratic sweep. And what a Democratic sweep means in Washington is potentially higher taxes and even stiffer regulations that would slow the economy.
Yesterday's sell-off was because of politics?
I think part of
Imagine
it,
yeah.
And
it wasn't the rising dollar, it wasn't rising rates, it wasn't...
No. And I think that, and the part that's discordant from that is the fact that rates were going up for no apparent reason. There wasn't any piece of data.